Alright, so we're working on Isaiah's Speed 6, the 07, and he needs a new left rear axle and a new rear differential mount. So the only thing we've done so far is take the wheels off and lift up the car all the way as high as we can get it and put it up on jack stands. Next thing we're going to work on is removing the exhaust. So let me see if I can get underneath here and show you guys what I'm talking about. So I've got to pull off the exhaust back here, and then those two bolts up there. That way that when the frame drops down, it's not in the way of the exhaust, because that one pipe right there is going to be going, coming off. And then once we get that pipe off, I'm going to take the drive shaft bolts off. Alright, so we got the mid pipe out. It's right here, out of the way. Had to use some heat on one of those forward bolts. But now the mufflers are just hanging. Actually, I can actually just take them off. The hangers, they'll be even more out of the way for us to get to the access to the subframe. Next thing we're going to work on though is going to be the drive shaft bolts. So I could probably access these two bottom ones pretty easily, and the two top ones we'll put the e-brake down and roll it back over to get these bolts off. So all those exhaust bolts will be replaced with new gaskets and everything when we put them back on. I'm going to start working on this here, and what we're replacing today is the differential mount. So you can see the front mounts right here, and the back ones, I don't know if you can see these, but they're behind this torn boot. You can see the boot on the axle. This whole axle is getting replaced today also. So let's work on that.
Alright, so we did go ahead and get the drive shaft and the exhaust off. You can see here the exhaust bolted there to the two mufflers. And one up there. You can see the drive shaft is just hanging down now. We're going to be working on dropping everything after that so that we can try and get the new differential mount brackets on. Yep.
Alright, so what I did here is I disconnected the two harnesses going to the differential. So there's two harnesses here, and I just removed this clip with the pry tool. Now what I'm working on is I'm taking off of these e-brake cables that are attached to it. So there's one here, there's one on that side, and then there's also these two stabilizer brackets for the front part of the subframe right here. So I got to take those two off also. But right now I'm going to continue working on the brakes. So before I start working on any of the main mounts of the subframe bolts, because there's this big guy right here, there's one on that side, and then the other ones are back here, one right here, and the other one's right here. So before I get to those, I'm going to continue to work on removing the brakes. So what I intend on doing is remove the other e-brake cable bracket from this side, and then I'm going to take the wheel speed sensors off the back of each hub. So let's work on that right now. Alright, so I've removed the caliper and zip tied them up to the brake line bracket up here. I removed the one retainer for the speed sensor right here on the frame up here. That's a little 10mm bolt. I'm actually pulling it through the body right now. So to get that, I had to remove the back seat. I had to remove the back seat. So I popped the back seat out from the bottom, and then a lot of people don't know these with Mazdaspeed 6s, but there's these little easy release latches in the trunk that open these little clips, and it makes the back seat tilt down. And then the two side pieces here, there's a 14mm bolt that goes down here. And then there's this little retainer safety clip back here. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. So this guy opens like this, and it pops this off right here. That piece right there pops off. So it's got a 14mm bolt on the bottom, little retainer there. And then the speed sensor is behind this plastic trim back here. So you can see that right there. So I've already disconnected the clip, feeding it through the body like this. So just pull it through the body. There you go. Now the speed sensor is attached to the rear subframe. So I've already gone ahead and loosened up this bolt right here for the subframe, and this one up here from the subframe. Now I just have to remove the control arm that swings up. There's two bolts that mount to the body, and then I have to remove the shocks from the bottom. I've already gone ahead and taken the nut off of the bolts on the shocks. I don't know if you can see that here. So now I just got to pull the bolt out, and then we're going to start lowering the subframe. All right, so underneath the car, I've already loosened up all of the frame mounts for the subframe and the forward control arms. You can see that those are just hanging there. And one thing I couldn't get to until I lowered it a little bit was this little vent tube bracket. It's a 10 millimeter on the back, but it's so round that I'm actually using a 3/8 right now. So I'm going to start taking that off. And another thing that I might have not mentioned when we removed the exhaust is that these brackets right here that hold onto these little rubber things, this is actually attached to the rear subframe. So you want to make sure that you loosen the exhaust on that also, because you'll be taking the exhaust with you when you're trying to lower the frame. All right, so we got the subframe out. You can see it's out here, and then what we're going to replace is this rear mount right here. We're going to replace this whole back rear mount, and the front one we're actually going to replace the bushing for this one here. So Corksport, I reached out to them to see if they sold this front mount, but they don't. But what we do have is a new bushing for this. So we'll take this one apart also and replace the inner sleeve, and this whole rear bracket, we're going to replace that right now. Isaiah's working on tightening up a shock mount that was rattling back there. So there's 3 bolts that hold the shock mount up to the body, and the main shock that was going up to that shock mount was loose. So Isaiah's taking that shock mount down to remove it and tighten it up. So that's what he's doing. He's working on taking these guys off. All right, so we're working on taking the top mount. They're 14 millimeters for these 4 bolts, and these back guys are 17s. So the new one is Corksport, and it's just like this. Very pretty. And then there's that new sleeve we're going to replace that front one with. We're going to work on taking this one. I'm also going to be pulling out this rear axle.
And we got the extra bushing.
Yeah. All right, so I just took off the mount, and you could see where it went bad. These bushings right here, you can see it's all, how you doing? Look at this. All over the place. Hey, how's it going? So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish taking off the front one. That way it'll give me more play to move around to get this rear axle out, because I just got to pop this one bolt off up here for this upper traction bar or torsion bar, and that'll allow me to move the the hub in and out a little bit, the spindle in and out. That should give me the extra room to remove this axle while I'm in here. So let me go ahead and start working on that. All right, we got ahead of ourselves, getting a little excited, but we got the frame back in, got the new axle in, and we're starting to line up the bolts on the frame. You can see the back one's lined up, and we started the thread there. I got the front one lined up and the front control arms bolted on, and now we're working on that. I already got the exhaust rehung back up on the rubber mounts back here. I'm gonna finish tightening up the subframe right now. All right, subframe's back on, wheels are back on, exhaust is all bolted up. We tested the transfer case. It didn't even move at all with the new mounts in place. It's done. Isaiah and I got a face full of rust. Yeah, rust everywhere. Isn't it lovely? All right, guys, thanks for watching. And stay tuned for the episode of us finishing this thing. It is running right now. We just got to finish a few little things. Thanks for watching, guys.